Hi there. Our president sure beat this coronavirus pretty quickly, didn't he? That's really upsetting the left. It's upsetting all those people who want us to be afraid of this, all those people on the left, because that's part of their agenda. But he showed them, and then when all these cases that came out of this super spreader event, as they call it, when nothing happens and they get better, how are you going to keep this fear going? Well, one way is to make everybody wear masks. That's why it's very important not to wear masks, in my view. Try not to wear the mask. Look, I just saw a quick video by Tony Heller, and it's like you would not need tests. You would not need masks. You would not need anything. If there was a true pandemic, people would be getting sick, and you would know it. Okay? Now they have to make it up. They have to test people, they have to do this, but who do you know who's sick and dying? Yes, maybe some older people, okay? That does happen. And I like the way our president explained what it was like. He felt tired. And I remember when my husband Harold got pneumonia once. I could tell he had pneumonia because he was walking, he just looked very tired. He didn't have his usual energy. So I said, let's go to the doctor. And I told the doctor, he's got pneumonia. Because I had seen that in some people with pneumonia before. So yes, if you feel tired, then go to the doctor. It's like having pneumonia. Go to the doctor if you have symptoms that don't feel right. And particularly if you're in an older category where you have to be a little bit more careful, go to the doctor. He's showing. I just think it's wonderful. And oh, it's just driving the left crazy. It's driving them crazy. You notice everything they complain about. Don't you think that's interesting? Now, I would not take any coronavirus vaccine, but they kept going on. We've got to shut down until there's a vaccine. But then what did our president do? He cleared away all the barriers. He didn't do it in the slow, bureaucratic way. He made sure probably that you can do things in parallel rather than in series, which really speeds things up. His so-called Operation Warp Speed. Well, we're going to have a vaccine. And also with all these treatments, he got rid of the barriers, just like a really good business person. Not like your slow government bureaucracy where people get paid no matter how poorly of a job that they do. So, everything they complain about and try to scare you with. See, they wanted to keep us shut down. There's some weird thing going on where they want this new normal, and we have to fight against this, people. We have to fight against it and say, no, we're not going to do it. Okay? Don't give in to this fear. It's nothing to be afraid of. Yes, it's very contagious, apparently. So a lot of people get it, and then they get over it. What's your problem? Okay, I did go through like one day where I thought, oh my gosh, is he not gonna win? Are we, I guess it just got to me. I'm a political junkie, so I'm listening to all this. But I kind of came to terms with it. I said, if the American people vote for Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, if they vote for the Democrats, then that's apparently what they want. But I don't think that's happening. Everything that the left is trying to do, they're going crazy now. They're trying to get people to vote, and they're trying to explain. They're worried that all this thing about mail-in voting is hurting them. By the way, I just got my vote information where you can vote in person and you can vote early and where the locations are. So I have 3 days marked on my calendar where I'm going to go to do it. I'm not going to vote 3 times, but I don't want to wait till the last minute. So I know just where I'm going to go, and I'm just going to be prepared to wait if that's necessary. But just in case something goes wrong, I'm going to have backup days. But I'm excited. I'm excited about voting. And I think the internal polling that President Trump has, what I hope is that he gets a huge, and I'm actually just kind of curious, because you cannot trust anything anymore. that you hear from the left-wing media. You can't even trust these polls, because one of the things that is apparently going on is that they want to discourage people. Don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged. I think we're all learning. It's really a shock when you first find out about how bad the information is. In fact, if you listen to the left-wing media, you just actually become not smart. I don't want to say stupid, but actually it's kind of stupid. Kind of stupid, because you don't really know what's going on. And they can't figure out why President Trump wins. Okay, that's just my overview, but I want to talk about the debate. There was a debate this week. Now, I know probably a lot of you didn't actually watch it. Maybe watch some of the highlights, because it's a vice presidential debate. But this was important. And I have to admit, I don't really like listening to Mike Pence that much, because he just sounds so, I don't know, boring. Let me just say it. He sounds boring to me, and very pious, but he did very well. Now, what was interesting, there's a couple of things to note from this debate, and that is, first of all, the moderator, she was a tad better than Chris Wallace was, this Susan Page from USA Today, but the questions are terrible. They don't elicit information, and they're all biased with the mainstream media viewpoint, or left-wing media. Gotta say it that way now. Left-wing media viewpoint. So they're all biased toward that. So one of the things, and I actually learned this on the when I worked on the Clinton-Gore campaign in Little Rock, and I was talking to one of the people there. And basically, what I learned in politics is that you don't have to answer the question. You don't have to answer the question. Because she was posing kind of silly questions. So what you do is you take the time that you have and you say what you want to say. So what Mike Pence did is he used that time to rebut what Kamala Harris said. I mean, she was just asking questions that didn't really give you anything. Now, if you don't ask a question that's an important question, like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, are you going to stack the Supreme Court? Are you going to increase the number of judges? That's a good question. Other questions, like if Roe v. Wade gets overturned, what would you do in your state of California? What would you do in Indiana? It's like, they're not, they're not governor of those states. What difference does it make? It was a silly question. So neither one of them answered it, nor should they have answered it. That's not what people are thinking about. So remember, you do not have to answer the question. That's not a good strategy. So let me say what I am actually thinking about this. I am annoyed that the media elites are trying to foist Kamala Harris on the American people. The Democrats didn't even like her. As I talked about earlier, and many of you know, she did not even make it in the Democratic primary. She started out good, because she actually looks good. You know, if you just see a picture of her, she looks good. So they put her up there, and then she just started dropping. She's very, very unlikable. She's very insincere. Her policies are terrible. She's mean. She's opportunistic. Everything about her is bad. So she didn't even make it in the Democratic primary. She dropped out before they even started voting. But then she gets picked as the vice presidential running mate. Why did they do that? Now, early on in her career, Jeff Zucker and he's the head of CNN, he made a point, and I think there were others, that she's going to be president. It's like he's a king or queen maker. It's like, no, we, the American people, decide. So having said that, I find that hugely disrespecting the American people, that they would put forth her as a candidate, as the vice presidential candidate. But I think it's very important that anybody who's voting Democratic has to realize they are not voting for Joe Biden. As bad as he is, they are voting for Kamala Harris because she will be the president. And oh my gosh, that would be a disaster. That'd be a disaster. I don't think she'd get reelected because she's that bad. So if, let's say, Joe Biden, after a couple months, they ease him out, and she becomes the president, or even after a year, I mean, he can't keep this up. He just won't be able to perform his duties. She'll become the president, but she won't win the second term. But let me point out a few things that were in this debate. And I'm actually not going to point out the things that all the other people on YouTube have pointed out. Well, I mean, first of all, if you just saw anything, she has this incredibly annoying smirk on her face. Her personal actions are very, very much a turnoff. And as someone who has studied female politicians and wanted to get more females in positions of power throughout well, that's what got me interested originally in politics. She's awful. She's awful. You do not want someone like this. But I was particularly struck. I mean, there was a lot I was struck on, but nobody mentioned this when she talked about foreign policy. She mentioned that, oh, you know, Joe and I, we talk about foreign policy, and you know, it's like relationships. So she was talking about how you have leaders that, you know, you treat your friends well and you stick up for them, and like it's a set of personal relationships with foreign countries and foreign leaders, and that's how you should do it. And as I was listening to that, I thought, yeah? What about the American people? What about our country? It's not just so you can get on the world stage and have buddies, okay? That's not what being president is about. You are representing the United States, and sometimes that means playing hard, and which Mike Pence just creamed her on that. Fighting for the American people, fighting for this country, and fighting for other countries. So she quoted some Pew Research study that said a lot of foreign leaders admire the Chinese leader more, Xi Jinping, more than President Trump. And I thought, well, la-di-da. So they admire the head of the Chinese Communist Party more than President Trump? Well, that tells you something about them. That tells you a lot about them. What's that about? This woman would be a disaster as president. Now, a lot came up about fracking, and she said right in the camera, Joe Biden will not stop fracking. Well, that conflicts with a lot of what he said. I mean, people don't seem to understand, a lot of people, how important our energy independence is. It's not just, it is jobs. It's huge jobs. It's even, I don't care about lowering CO2, I want to raise CO2, but even having said that, when you have natural gas, that has greatly lowered CO2 emissions. It's clean. We want fracking. So not only does it involve a ton of jobs all over the country, but mostly like Pennsylvania, Texas, places like that. Not only does it involve lots of jobs, but it also, geopolitically, it's hugely important, hugely important. And speaking of foreign policy, oh my gosh, what President Trump has done. He's gonna pull the troops out of Afghanistan. He wants to do it by the end of December. He's getting peace in the Middle East. There's so much that he has done internationally for this country. And there's people all over the world who are looking to him as America, the last bastion of freedom. And I really want to get us out of the UN, and I'm glad we're not doing much with the World Health Organization, because this whole thing about a new normal, they have been trying to set something up. They're trying to, and they're using fear to do it. So it's very important that we not give into this fear. It's not just about this, but it's about climate change, the so-called climate change. You notice it's all made up stuff. Because if you look, what is the problem with the climate? Anywhere. Not at all. All the stuff that they're projecting to happen. Don't go there, people. Don't go there. I want to announce, and he said I could say it, but my stepson, Robert, longtime Democrat, is going to vote for Trump. He's going to vote for Trump. That's big. A lot of people are going to vote for Trump. They're maybe not saying it. Notice how the Democrats are really trying to, they're having all these ads, they're trying to get people to, they're worried that people aren't going to vote. They're worried that they're not going to fill out their ballots correctly and they'll get thrown out. So they're having all of these movie, people in movies. By the way, people in movies that say these awful things about our president, they're in such a bubble. Such a bubble. Because every time I see somebody that does that, I think, okay, I'm not watching your movies anymore. That's it. You're off my list. If you come out for climate, if you get all political on me, it's like, I'm not supporting you. I'm not watching your movies. Now, what's interesting is there's still a lot of movies you can watch. But I am absolutely not going to watch your movies. We have got to show them that you are knocking half the country when you do that. It's really been interesting to me because it makes me see that many people are really about their group. They don't think beyond that. So if they're just hanging out with people, they're like, look, I'm going to also say what everybody else in the group is saying. They're all sheep. Everybody's sheep. It's like they're afraid to be the one to stand out and say, no, that's not right. A few of them do, but it's hard. It's hard for most people. I'm grateful that it's not that hard for me. By the way, I was running with Robert in the park on Friday, yesterday. And of course, we don't wear masks. But we were going by this one, we were walking back to the car. And so she was standing there, has her mask, and she's like, I knew what she was doing. She was like waving us on to walk past her. But Robert, he's like, didn't get it, and he's like waving to her. And she said, no, you don't have a mask. I'm waiting for you to get by. And I'm just like, oh, Robert's too nice. But I just said, you are so stupid. I mean, it's just so idiotic. So seriously, outside, you're still concerned about, I really think we have to fight back. Okay, one of the problems is, I keep hearing people say, oh, they don't like me because I'm for Trump, or I feel this way, or, oh, it's like, get over it, okay? Don't like them. Don't like them. Tell them they're idiotic. Roll your eyes at them. Don't think you have to please these people. Why? No, I don't want those people in my life. I don't want those people in my life, okay? You want to be like living in communist China and adopting their ways of doing business? Go live there, not in this great country. Oh my God, I love President Trump so much because he just says it and they hate it, okay? He's fighting for us and we know it. He's standing up and he's giving courage to other people to stand up. So You know, by the way, back to the debate for a moment. Vice President Pence did very well. But Trump is the one that has given others the courage to fight back, to say no. And so everybody's getting tougher on our side. And that's what we need to do. Now let me say something too. I've been reading a lot about critical race theory. And this is this whole idea that you define people by race. But what I've learned is that it actually stemmed from sort of Marxist thinking in the Frankfurt School, and I don't know all the details, but Charlie Kirk and others have talked about this, about what its origins are. And Angela Davis, I remember in the late 60s, she was big in California. And let me tell you why I remember this, much to my dismay. In 9th grade, I was picked by my high school, Tenaya. Not high school, junior high school. So we had like this vote. Tenaya, there was like 1,100 people in our school. And I got picked to be Raisin Bowl Queen. I think that's because my sister Denise and her friends, and you know, I had my picture up, and it was kind of a good picture, I think. You know, and I got voted. I got voted to represent Tenaya as for the Raisin Bowl Queen. Now, one of the things I realized is that when I was young, nobody really talked to me about politics or anything like that. I didn't have any, how do I say, guidance. And I'm not saying that anybody should have, you know, programmed me, but nobody like talked to me. So I would just come up with these views. So I remember I didn't win for the whole Raisin Bowl, because Fresno has grapes and raisins and all that. Because I gave a little speech, and people then told me that's why you didn't win, because it's kind of a conservative area. But I said that I admired Angela Davis, I mean, she was the one with an afro at the time, and Emmylou Harris. She was, I forgot exactly, she was like a singer, but they were definitely on the left. But in my mind, at that time, they were just outspoken women, and I admired that. But nobody talked to me about what they believed and what they were for. I don't think I would have been for it. So I always think about sometimes my upbringing, in many ways it was what you would call benign neglect, in that I didn't have a lot of guidance in many ways, but I also didn't get squashed. But I didn't get to be Raisin Bowl Queen. So I've been hearing about Angela Davis. A lot of work she's done, and she's still around. I saw her on something. She's still around. She actually was one of the ones that really got this whole critical race theory thing going. And critical race theory, I guess they called it critical theory, but it was really Marxism. And so now they found that class didn't really work, doing on the basis of class. But doing on the basis of race, dividing people on the basis of race, is a way to implement all this. You divide people and create all these divisions. But what's in some of the stuff I've been listening to, what's really creepy is that this has actually seeped into the churches, where they're starting to teach this in some of the churches and other institutions where you wouldn't expect it to be. So we have really got to root this out, people. And if I don't attend any particular church, but if you do and they start talking about race, be very careful. You've got to talk to them. And another thing I think we have to do is, until we fix the schools, we have to talk to kids. We have to tell them what's going on. There was a really good comment to one of my videos, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, and I thought, this is great. Sometimes I read a comment, I think, this is really great, I've got to answer this, and then stuff happens and I don't get to it. And I forget the man's name. For some reason David comes to mind, but I'm not sure what his name is, and I apologize if you're hearing this. But he said that he always talked to his kids about advertisements. Like, what are they trying to sell you? For them to think critically about that. So I think it's a mistake to just send kids off to school and not explain to them that when the teacher teaches you and they go off the subject, if you will, the teacher might be trying to put a particular point of view on you, and to be aware of that, to be aware of that. Now, whether they speak out or not, that's a whole nother issue, but they need to be aware of it. It's good to teach them to think critically about what they're hearing. And in today's world, these messages come in through movies. I mean, it's just shocking. All the movies I see, there's this message, and it's not a message I want, and I see it. It's happening really fast right now. So one of the things I think that what's different about 2020 is that a lot of this has happened quickly. The good part is that people are seeing things, we're all seeing things that we were not aware of. And I am really eager to see how big Trump's win is, how big our win is. I think he'll win Electoral College, but he might win popular vote. I'd like to see him win the popular vote. It's just going to drive them crazy, okay? Not that I care if it drives them crazy, but they really do think that we're that easily manipulated, that we want to be like them. Well, no, I do not want to be like you, Hollywood. I don't want to be like these people who aren't very smart. Seriously. These so-called experts are not very smart. Now, you say, oh, you know, there's no good reporters. In the left-wing media, yes, there are no good reporters. They're all pushing a narrative. However, there are good investigative journalists, like Christopher Rufo, who really brought this critical race theory stuff to light. I think about Alex Berenson. He's a former New York Times reporter. He has really looked into the COVID-19 numbers, and I love listening to him and what he has to say. He's very good. He's often on Tucker Carlson, on Laura Ingram's show, and I follow him on Twitter, so I get all his tweets. He is very good. And he said the other day, it was on Laura Ingraham. Unfortunately, you know, on those shows, they don't get a lot of time to talk. But he said, almost as if he was puzzled, like, what is it they're trying to do with this? He goes, these numbers have been out. This is not serious. We now know this is not super serious. What are they trying to do? They're trying to get us to comply. He didn't use those exact words. But it was like he didn't understand that. Like, wow, I'm really getting it now. They're trying to do something else. This isn't really about the virus. So I shouldn't put words into his mouth, but it was something akin to that. And I remember I had that same awakening about the whole climate change. I mean, it really is a shock. Now there's a thing called, in scientific circles, and not a lot of people know this, it's called the file drawer effect. So if you're a scientist and you do a study, like, let me just pick something. Let's say you do a study, and it turns out your study is climate change is not a problem, or this is not a problem, or that is not a problem. There's nothing new there. You're not showing anything. So you just put the study in the file drawer. But it's very important because you need to see that you had a study that showed something, say, was not a problem or something didn't happen. It's like not news. It's not something they can publish because there's nothing there. But the fact that there's nothing there is important. So it's called the file drawer effect. There's another effect, doesn't have a name as far as I know, but I certainly saw it with the whole climate change thing, and I see it now with the reaction to the coronavirus. And that is if there is a story or some study that seems to support whatever the left-wing media narrative is, it will get headlined, okay? So even the sloppiest study showing hydroxychloroquine is not effective. I mean, it's a sloppy study, and sometimes they have to retract it. It's a terrible study. It will get headlines, okay, because it fits the narrative. But studies that show it's effective, it gets downplayed. And that's the same thing that's happened over and over again with the whole climate change issue. I mean, it's actually, as I've mentioned before, it's so tiresome. You think, enough already, okay? People have been talking about this. People have been debunking this. And you think, for sure it's debunked, okay? And it doesn't go away. So my new philosophy is there will always be something. There will always be something. So even if we manage to whack this mole down, whack that mole, whack-a-mole, whack-a-mole, even if we manage to wipe it all out, there will be new things. The good thing is that none of this stuff is real. The bad thing is, I don't even know if I'd call it a bad thing, but there is a tendency to not be grateful for what you have. To not be grateful for what you have. We have energy. Right now I have health. I have a beautiful home. So we have love, we have friends. You know, if you don't count your blessings in this wonderful, wonderful country, if you don't count your blessings and you don't teach people to count their blessings, they'll just they'll just create problems. It's a sickness, people. It's a sickness. I am convinced there is a sickness on the left. Now, partly that's my own situation. As I look back to things I used to believe, I'm a little shocked. I'm not shocked, and I have it all down in my journals. I read it and I'm like, wow. Because as you heal things, you just realize, wow. Wow. So I'm going to make this shorter today. Everybody get out and vote in person, and let's just see how big we're going to make this. How big is our win going to be? Hi, Andy. Bye now.